I kind of have this golden rule. Like if I can't be myself wherever I am, I'm in the wrong place. And so it's not to say, again, you wave your flag like, oh my God, I'm, freaking out and this is going on and all that. But like to be able to share some level of where you are and what you're going through so that you can show up authentically for your team, I think is critical. Because when your team can relate to you as a human being, you're going to get the most out of them.
Hey, possibility seekers. Is everyone having a great day? Well, you're about to have a great day because I have a great guest. Let me tell you about Dana Codispoti. She is a cutting edge global HR executive bringing 25 years of diverse experience spanning various industries and geographies. Currently, she serves as the managing director and chief people officer at Madison Realty Capital. Dana has also held prestigious senior leadership positions at AIG, BNY Mellon, Morgan Stanley, and PwC, both domestically and internationally. Beyond her corporate endeavors, Dana is deeply committed to supporting women facing personal crises. As the founder of her own coaching practice and a co founder of the related nonprofit Hire, she works with professional women, guiding and empowering them through those challenging times. Certified as a coach, Dana is not only a dedicated mother and empathetic leader, but also an enthusiastic traveler, proudly raising two incredible children in the bustling city of New York City. Driven by her passion for creating a brighter future, Dana is dedicated to building a better world for our children and the generations to follow. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you so much.
It's great having you. I'm so excited to chat with you. I know that we were introduced um, l- by not only our good mutual friend Jeff, but also the mutual admiration and support that I have for Safe Horizons. And welcome. So, you've built an extraordinary path rooted in purpose and strength, which is one of the many reasons I wanted to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about Hire and why this organization so deeply matters to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Hire is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization that I co-founded with my colleague Yenvi. Hire is about women empowerment, and it was about 9 years ago that I went through what I consider my own personal crisis. And when I say crisis, what was my crisis had to do with leaving an abusive relationship, and really finding a new life for my children and myself. Um, but personal crisis, as it relates to hire, really isn't about the thing you're going through. It's about the feeling, right? So when we say we're supporting women in personal crisis, it doesn't matter what your crisis is. It's about feelings of hopelessness, feelings of despair, feelings of being stuck, like you can't move forward. There's a huge mountain in front of you that you're trying to climb and you just can't get to the other side. And so, in the women we work with, that could be anything from, yes, maybe leaving domestic abuse situations. Maybe it's I'm going through a career crisis. Maybe I'm in a phase of my life where I just don't know what's next. It could be anything, but those feelings are the common thing that threads everybody together. So we work with women who are ready to show up and do the work, and I think that's a really important part because you have to be mentally ready to want to help yourself. And so our mission is really about empowering women to face the crisis they're in so that anything that comes their way, they're going to have the tools to move through it. And then they're going to pass that on to their daughters, their friends, their children, grandchildren, and we will change generations to come.
So I appreciate that you said two things I wanted to put a finer point on. One is they have to be ready to do the work. And I think that's a big, big, big distinction with a huge difference. And so, we can talk about that. And then also the different types of crises. Now, your personal story really hit home for me. And my interview with Liz Roberts, the CEO of Safe Horizons, had me really reconsider what domestic violence looks like because I think the average person, the average woman who is of a certain socioeconomic level or has been brought up or lives in a what we'll call a non, whether it be low income housing scenario, thinks that she is immune to that, and she's not.
She's absolutely not. And I think, I spoke at Safe Horizon this year at Champion. That was part of shedding the light on, people think that, survivors of a domestic violence situation or something similar don't look like me. And what I mean by that is someone who, I always say it was like seemingly thought I had it all together because on the outside, I was running teams of over 300 people globally around the world, you know, always buttoned up, always dressed to the nines, always, looking my best, empowering my teams and other people. And when your towers are crumbling behind you, no one knows, right? So I think that was really how my work in general, because as you know, I have my own coaching practice as well. But I realized when I spent 4 years in court and I was showing up in a court that was specific for domestic violence, every time I went in there, I just kept thinking, like, if this is happening to me, someone who, like, on the outside, I was killing it. I was killing it. And I just kept thinking, what's happening to all these other women who may not have the resourcefulness, the wherewithal, the discipline, the support around them to like navigate it. And I knew then I was already involved with Safe Horizon from, a couple years with Jeff and Morgan Stanley team, but I knew there was something more I needed to do. I wasn't sure what that was, but I just knew that there would be something more that I would have to do with this experience. And so, I mean, when I was going through my own situation, I had just started my job at BNY Mellon 2 weeks prior. So, you're you're hired to just make impact, prove yourself. My team was global, I was already traveling to, around the world to meet the team and whatever. And this all goes down. And I remember, we had filed for an order of protection, and I remember having to go to corporate security. And I called them, and I was in the bathroom with the door closed, just full of shame. And I remember saying, "I'm really embarrassed to say this, but I need you to know, I have an order of protection," and I remember he said to me, first, take a deep breath. He was very great about it, but he said, "You're not the only one." And he said, "And there's way more, even more senior to you." Not as to downplay my seniority, but I was 2 down from the CEO. And he was saying, "There's more people around you going through this." And I just thought, "What?" Because you just were I was like, "That can't be." And then at that point, you're a woman in financial services, there's not that many of us at that level, and you're thinking, "Well, who is it?" Right? But no one's talking about that. And so, that was another moment for me where I was like, we have to be here supporting one another. And if no one's sharing and no one's talking about it, how are we lifting each other up and how are we moving through these things? So, and it's not to say you have to wave the flag and say, like, my life is falling apart and everyone needs to know. It's not about that, but it's about the human side and the ability to be vulnerable enough to have that tribe around you and people that understand. Because that's the other thing I think about and I share a lot in some of my practice work is that often I always say you need to find your tribe when you're going through these things. And oftentimes that tribe is not at all the people you think, and it's not because people are mean or anything like that. It's often your family or your friends or your tight knit community may not have experienced something like that before and truly don't know how to help. And so, when we look at Hire as an example and the way my partner and I came together to co-found it, it's because she was having similar experiences that I was, where everywhere we went, we were finding women who were going through something. And she was finding that a lot with her friend group. And she said to me, she said, "Dana, I can be their friend, but I don't know how to help them because I've never experienced this before. And she goes, but you do. And so that's when we came together to say, okay, let's put our minds together. She's an entrepreneur. I have the experience, and let's figure out how we can do this together.
So what's the model for hire so people are clear?
Yeah. So the model for hires, and frankly, we're a startup. We're starting new, and we're figuring it out as we go. But the model is that when you're going through something like this, there's an application process that you can go to online, and it'll ask you questions that sort of test for us, is this person ready? Is this person ready to do the work and work with us? Because the goal is, especially because we're a nonprofit, and we want to make sure our funds are going to people who we're going to be able to empower. Can they do the work? What are they going through? Does it make sense? And then we have a team of master coaches. We have about 5 master coaches globally around the world. We have one that sits in Spain. We have one on the West Coast. We have a couple on the East Coast. And we have 2 models, and we're kind of testing both out right now. But ideally, we put our first cohort through where we had a group of women who each had different, experiences that they were going through, but the program is the same and the work is the same. A lot of it is around your mindset, your perspectives, there's a lot of healing work that we do in there, and a lot of learning and teaching. So many of us move through the world with no knowledge of our nervous system and how it works, and the fact that we're operating in fight or flight all day, every day. And so we teach a lot of that, and we give them the tools and the skills to kind of manage that through, as well as we're creating an ecosystem of partners so that, say one of our participants has a specific need, we can refer them out to different partners where, maybe they need to get their hair done for an interview, or maybe they need specific coaching in their next relationship or what have you. So we're building that community. The other way is one-on-one coaching. So sometimes we get calls where maybe they don't need the full program, but they kind of just need to move through a moment where they're like, I'm stuck. I can't figure out what to do. We'll have those one-on-one coaching moments as well, and we'll assign a coach and move them through that. So we have the 2 models going on right now. Ideally, we want to get to a model where we're running group cohorts on a regular basis, and the more awareness we can get out, the more women we can serve, and kind of keep this growing and until infinity.
That's amazing. How long is a program tech right now?
It's about 12 weeks.
And you meet every other week, every week?
It's about every other week with work in between.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah, I mean, and this is what you do, when you're not running people for a large organization. And so there's that.
Yes. Yeah.
Your journey was a BS in industrial engineering from Lehigh, and then to your role at chief people officer, and then you're working with high-powered women in personal crisis. This is well, it's so interesting that I see how you and it happened sort of by accident in a way, right? That your relationship to crisis and understanding that makes you such a more empathetic and credible and authentic people leader, I think.
Yeah, I think that you found each other, and I think that's a fun fact. A lot of people don't know that I have an engineering background. It makes sense for me in so many ways. So, just a little bit about that journey. I started, when I was preparing for college. I come from an immigrant family where everything is about the school you go to and making sure that, you get the right education. And so, my father was basically like, you need to know what you want to do before you go to college. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I have no idea. So he said, well, you're great in math and science. Why don't you try engineering? And I was like, sure. And so I looked for engineering schools. I did. I was great in math. I loved science. And I was like, okay, sure. Why not? Ended up at Lehigh, got this, and again, very male dominated field. So very early on, I was in a very male dominated field with, very few women in our classes. And then at the time when I graduated, consulting was really hot. And so I took a job at PwC where they promised me, they said, okay, don't worry, you're not going to be programming. You're going to learn, but you won't be programming. And I was like, great, And of course, my first 12 weeks of training on the job was learning like 8 different programming languages. So I end up programming my first job and it was awful. And I just looked at my friend. I'm like, I hate this. I'm behind a computer and like, I don't even know. I wasn't even good at programming. And he said to me, he goes, you should learn this software called PeopleSoft, which was an HR software. I'm probably dating myself, but that's okay. And so, I again, with my personality, I was like, "Sure, why not?" You know? And so I learned that, and I ended up running massive HR projects, around this software. And so that's how I entered into HR, and then I left consulting after 7 years and went to Morgan Stanley, where I sort of became this honestly, our friend Jeff was the one who kind of kept leveraging me as this, like, problem solver and big projects. Oh, Dana will figure it out. And it had to do more with less the people side of HR but more of the infrastructure side and the processes and the systems and the programs and the management of it all. And so I grew up in a very operational and program management space around systems and everything, but I was always a people person. So being in the world of HR again, even though I'm in HR, I'm in financial services, male dominated, right? So you're learning all these things about how to navigate the workplace with a male dominated environment, really frankly just having to work a lot harder and more and differently than others to get to the same place. Over time, HR became my world. And as a leader, I think is where I really developed my interpersonal skills. And I think naturally I have a comfort level with being vulnerable that I think many leaders may struggle with. I don't know why I'm like this, but I really have this innate ability to be vulnerable, which I think helped me as a leader in a lot of ways. And so, it's not for everyone.
Yeah, talk about I'd like you to talk about that because that was sort of the segue of my next question.
I think I just have a natural tendency to I kind of have this golden rule, like, if I can't be myself wherever I am, I'm in the wrong place. And so, it's not to say, again, you wave your flag like, "Oh my god, I'm, freaking out and this is going on and all that," but, like, to be able to share some level of where you are and what you're going through so that you can show up authentically for your team, I think is critical. Because when your team can relate to you as a human being, you're gonna get the most out of them. So, just naturally and I had the very fortunate experience in my entire career of being around absolutely amazing people. From PwC to Morgan Stanley to my jobs after, like, I was around good humans. And, there's always a few in the bunch, right? But genuinely good humans who I could relate to, they can relate to me, and it allowed me to be myself. And so I think naturally teens gravitated toward me for that because they can then be themselves. And again, I think you get the most out of people in that way. And so I didn't realize though, honestly, that that didn't come naturally for most people. People don't want to be vulnerable. It feels scary. It feels like a level of exposure and it feels like you're taking a huge risk because you may be judged. But I think I always had this thing where I was like, okay, if I'm going to be judged for that and criticized or whatever, then I'm not in the right place.
Do you think that part of that has to be that the person has to be somewhat more comfortable in their own skin to be that authentic self and that more vulnerable? I do.
I do too. I definitely think that. And I think that's what I'm seeing too, a lot, especially in women, where there's a lot of just imposter syndrome and being uncomfortable in their skin and being unsure of themselves. And it's a harsh world that, out there. And it's corporate America isn't the easiest for women. And so I do think that's a big part of it. And frankly, I went through that myself. I think I wasn't always super confident. Like, and I don't know that I am now either. I'm confident enough in myself. I have enough, you know, experience behind me and life experience that, yeah, I'm much more comfortable in my skin than I was even 10 years ago. But, when you're in your 20s, your 30s, you're still unsure, you're navigating. And I think, it's scary for people to really just put it all out there. And there's also a balance, right? Yeah, you can be vulnerable, but there's a
Oh, there's a line. There's a line of vulnerability in corporate America that you need to not cross. As a HR person, you might be familiar with the predictive index. It's one of the many, right? And so when I used to use the predictive index for hiring and so on, there's something interesting for those of you who are not familiar with it. The tool allows you to see how the person sees themselves relative to the job that they are doing or going to be doing if they're being hired, and then what they think that job needs as a personality profile. And then you see when the person's self view versus the view of what they think the job is are at a complete diametrically opposed, you know you have a conflict. And I believe that more people in corporate America should go through a system or a process or a tool like that to check for alignment. Right? You're good enough to say you are comfortable enough to say, if I'm not feeling like my authentic self, I'm not in the right place. They are pretending to be someone else in order to fit into that place. That's where we get so much, I think, conflict.
Conflict, and also think about what that does to you as a person.
You show up at 9 o'clock, you have to turn into a different human. How does that even work? I wouldn't even know how to begin. I'm much more simple that way. I'm like, this is what you get. What you see is what you get, and you get it 24/7.
Yeah, and I have to share this. My daughter, she's so little, yet she's so, the things she asked me are so profound sometimes, and she came to me recently and she said, "Mommy, will people love me for who I am, or do I need to change?"
Wow. How old was she when she said that?
9. It blew my mind because, of course, my response was, as it would be, absolutely, never change. And if, not everyone's going to be your people, and if not, if you have to change to be around people, those are not your people. But think about how many people show up every day having to be somebody else, right? We talk about underrepresented groups. We talk about women. We talk about all these people who feel like they have to show up differently. That is exhausting.
It's absolutely it's almost like it's a form of lying, right?
It's a form of lying to yourself and to others, and no one should have to do that, right? And think about that, what that does to your mind, to your body, how taxing it is on your nervous system and all of that.
Your cortisol levels are always spiking. I mean, it's just so much.
So much. And so we need to do better with that and find ways to allow people to be more of themselves wherever they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And now when you went from more what I'll call programmatic to the more people side of HR, did you would encounter people going through personal crises, and what does that mean to you as you were
I am encountering it a lot more, and I don't know if it's because more of us are showing up to say, "Hey, this happened to me," or "You're not alone," right? But, I was at back to school night last night, and a friend of mine who also had her own situation, she said, "Dana, everyone I talk to," she's like, "I'm on all of these groups, and all these women are saying this happened to them, that happened to them. Where do we send them? What do we do?" It's scary, but I see hope because I see more people reaching out for help, but a lot of them just don't know where to go. So the more we can catch those things and point them in the right direction, whether it is Safe Horizon or whether it is a higher type, organization, or, they're very different organizations, we have to be able to send people to the right place and give them a net. I think people are falling and we need to be catching them.
I wanted to ask you what the expanded definition of personal crisis. I think you addressed it a little bit in the beginning, but I wanted you to kind of go deeper into what could that look like. Now you're people officer. What do not we're not going to discuss confidential cases, but as the last couple of career paths you've had, jobs that you've had, you have seen personal crises one on one. What could that look like for those of us listening right now so that they can kind of self-identify? What does that look like?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, look, let's take one scenario where there's something acute that happens in your life. It could be what we talked about, it could be a death in the family, it could be a parenting challenge. It could be all those things. And those could be acute things that you're like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? And it's like short lived, but you still need the tools to get through. What I'm also seeing is, I have to say, what I'm seeing is COVID has done so much damage to especially the women I'm seeing, where the levels of anxiety and stress and inability to just navigate even the normal politics of corporate America is very challenging. And for good reason, right? People were not in the office. That is such a scary time. I think everyone was under just in fight or flight for those years. I'm seeing it now where the confidence is lost. There's a lot of self doubt. There's a lot of just anxiety and, a lot of people being unsure. And I think that itself is almost like a chronic crisis, if you will, because we have to empower these generations to with the tools to show up in the way we feel, or corporate America, or any organization needs to drive things forward. And I'm seeing a lot of just the strength is lost, the grit, right?
I think so.
Grit is so important in how you show up at work, and I'm not seeing that level of grit that, I know I saw in my entire career at the organizations I've been at. And so I think that's something we need to go deeper on and figure out how to work through, because um it's its own pandemic, if you will.
Yeah, I've interviewed a woman, Liz Van Voorhees, and she's a resilience coach. She goes into corporate settings and she tries to build the grit and the resilience sort of mindset that I do agree with you, it is missing. So, survivors carry their own invisible scars, as we talked about before. How do we as a society need to change the way we see and support those victims?
Yeah, I think there's two things to look at here, and one of them we addressed earlier, which is I think people have a certain image of what a survivor looks like in their mind. It's just not true. It's just not true. And I think people also think of domestic abuse as physical. And that is also not true. And I remember when I was going through my experience, I had never heard of this the the wheel of abuse, or the wheel of control. I don't know if you've ever it's really interesting. I encourage people to look it up, but it's basically a wheel, and Safe Horizon does a lot of work around this, but that really shows what abuse looks like, the different types of abuse, whether it's financial abuse or physical abuse or mental abuse or emotional abuse. And, as a woman going through my own, I mean, I can recall conversations I had with law enforcement where they were like, "Sorry, if you're not hurt, we can't do anything." And I remember saying, are you saying, because I was so, like, taken aback, I said, "Are you saying because I'm not physically wounded, you can't do anything?" And they said, "Yes, ma'am." That broke my heart for myself, but for everybody else, I thought, "Whoa, we are failing victims." And so, to learn about, whoa, so when you see that wheel, you're like, oh, wait, yes, 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 maybe no to the physical part, but oh my goodness, I had no idea that's what abuse looks like. And so there's a lot of education that has to happen around that. And that's something that needs to change in society, because people have a one-track mind about who that person looks like and what it is. And so to me, there's a lot of work left to do there. But then also, I think the second piece is, how do we get people to move through the fear and seek help, or be okay with sharing it with a friend, or moving through the shame so that you can get out? Because I think what happens is a lot of people feel so much shame, they don't want to talk about it, but then they're literally spiraling. And, part of my personal mission and Hire's mission is to make sure these women don't spiral down, because we have a lot of examples too of friends, whatever, where they said, well, my mom went through that and she spiraled down. She never made it back. So, like in my own coaching work, my tagline is get back to badass, because we all have that badass in us. So, like, the mission is let's get you back to badass and get you empowered in a way that you're never going to crumble through anything that comes to you. You will be able to find a way, and it's not going to be easy. It's hard work. And frankly, I've done a lot of hard work, but it's lifelong work. I have my days. I need my own tribe and my own coaches and my own people around me going, lifting me up when I have my days. But it's about creating that community and creating a legacy so that we can change the paradigm around what all this looks like so that women can feel more supported.
It's brilliant, brilliantly said. I mean, we should never underestimate the power of community and tribe anyway, right? Because I think even if you're in a wonderfully balanced and thriving relationship, you still have the days where your hair is on fire, you're trying to manage career and children and home and relationships and self-care, which we are hoping to learn that is not selfish anymore, right? But, what has this all taught you about resilience?
So one of the things I developed was a method called the RISE method, and it says resilience plus intuition plus self care equals empowerment. And so resilience to me is, it's the ability to move through whatever comes your way with grace, with dignity, with lessons learned, with empowerment, right? But underneath that, I think it's how do you do it? And I think often people that aren't resilient are very black and white thinkers, or they're not able to apply perspective to the situations that they're in, So there's a lot of work we do around like changing your language, like why is this happening to me? Why is this? And we're like, nothing happens to you, it happens for you. And there's got to be work around, you've got to actually believe that. If you got to believe that to start the work. And frankly, for me, it took me a while. And then life just kind of drops you angels along the way or little gifts along the way, and you start to realize like, yeah, this is for me in some way. And so there's a lot of work we do around changing your language so that you could see things through a different light. And I think all these little tiny tools, they sound tiny, but they're mighty. They're mighty tools to be able to change the whole paradigm about how you move through situations. And that's where the resilience comes in. And no matter what you're going through, somebody out there is going through something way worse. And when you're able to really see that and pull from your own empathy, you look at things different and you're really like, I got this, I've got this. So resilience to me, that's one thing I really try to teach my kids now because it's essential. And especially in the world we're living in these days, you've got to be really resilient to just navigate each and every day with grace.
So I'm really curious as to know whether how what had your daughter ask you that question? That actually blew my mind pretty hard. And the fact that she articulated it, because I think that 90% of the kids would have never even had language around it. So good for you as a mom that she had language around it and had the ability to come to you with trust and an open heart and say, "Mom, this is the thing that's on my mind right now, and I'm navigating it. I just need your perspective," which was kinda cool, but kids are cruel. I mean, I know this firsthand. Having been bullied as a child for being different, you're like, "Damn, they're" and now they've got multiple channels to be cruel on.
Correct. My daughter has always had the incredible ability to articulate her thoughts since she was 4 or 5. It always blew my mind. So she's got a lot of these that she comes out with, but that particular day really stuck with me, especially because of the work that I'm doing. And I think, she's entering that age where girls are cruel. And she never really shared with me where that came from, because sometimes she'll say the thing, but she doesn't say the why. But and look, kids, they get, corrected for behavior all day long, whatever. And, like she's well aware. She's like, Mom, school isn't made for kids. We're not meant to sit in a chair all day. And I'm like, you're right. So she has this wisdom.
She's an old soul. She's an old soul.
She's a very old soul, but she has this wisdom about her that frankly inspires the heck out of me every day because I see in her like, she was always a confident child and very self-aware from very little that the moment she said that to me, I thought, "Oh, it's starting to waver." And my job as her mother is to make sure that confidence doesn't waver because she is gonna face so many things in this life, and I need her to have that resilience. We talk a lot about the intuition piece. I think intuition is the greatest superpower we're all walking around with and for free, and we're not using it, right? So, I teach them that at a very young age as well. And the self-care component, yeah, it used to be like a terrible thing, like, "Oh, you can't take care of yourself. That's, selfish." Like, no. And so my other wise child the other day, when we were like, there's so much going on, especially as a single mom with 2, they've got their activities, and he's like, "Mom, you gotta put your oxygen mask on first." And I'm like, "Thanks for the reminder."
Good job, mommy. Good job. That was good.
So I see now they're starting to play back, and I'm thinking, okay, whatever I'm doing, like it's not always easy, but these things are sticking. But again, that's where the legacy piece comes in. If we can change the dynamic and the teaching for our sons and our daughters, imagine 2 generations from now what it will be like. And that is truly the mission and the goal. And yes, I have a demanding job and I'm a single mom and I don't have a ton of time to spend in this space. And that's why we're building teams to do that. But man, is it a mission that I go to sleep with every single night to say, like, how are we going to move the dial each and every day?
Love it. You have incredible IQ and even greater EQ. So you're just got the whole package there, Miss Engineer. So what's something very few people know about you, but they should?
I'm going to say 2 things kind of combined. I think sometimes people see the hard, like driven, perfectionist, whatever. But on the inside, I'm truly a deep empath, but I'm also quite an introvert. Um, People don't think I'm an introvert, I think because I'm very much a people person, but I can't tell you how much I value quiet time and alone time and just going inward. And if I'm honest, it's hard to find that time. I don't have a lot of it, but I crave it. And frankly, sometimes I'm just like self-combusting because I don't get enough of it. But at the core, I'm really more of an introvert that I think most people would be shocked by.
I think I'm coming to that conclusion about myself as well, but and and what would you tell your 30-year-old self knowing everything that you know now if you had a chance to speak with her?
I would 100% tell her she was enough by being just who she was. I never felt like I was enough, not at home, not at school, not anywhere. And, when you go from like an immigrant family who's pushing you hard to be a perfectionist to a male dominated environment in school to in the workplace, I never felt like I was enough. And I probably still grapple with that a lot, right? Less than I did for sure. But when I see my daughter who knows she's enough and, minus that one comment, I never heard her say something like that. I thought, wow, if I had an ounce of what she had at that age. So, yeah, I would tell her, you are enough, just who you are. Just be who you are.
Awesome. What a masterclass, Dana Codispoti. Thank you so much for being here. This was amazing. For those of you who want to get in touch with Dana, I'm going to put it in the show notes, but Dana Codispoti, CODISPOTI.com and liftherhigher.org are her 2 places to get in touch and learn more and support. Thank you so much, Dana. It's been great having you here. Please share this episode. Please like this episode, rate the episode, and for God's sake, subscribe. Make it a great day, ladies and gents. It's a day for possibilities. Bye bye. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique de Maio, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at moniquedemaio.com. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.